Okay, our moderator for the panel on ultralight web analytics is Maisha Walker, who is somewhat of a regular now, moderating at Ultralight. Maisha is an award-winning 13-year internet industry veteran and president of Message Medium. Maisha has designed custom web analytics tools and configured web trends and Google Analytics for companies like Unilever, AOL, Time Warner, Delia's, the Princeton Club of New York, and Save the Children, basically defining what success looks like for their online initiatives. Maisha has also taught hundreds of entrepreneurs how to read their web analytics like a pro through her intensive internet marketing classes. They are often subsidized and free. She is also the e-commerce expert for Inc.com and author of Website Fundamentals for Entrepreneurs. Information about her book and upcoming classes is available at messagemedium.com. So we're thrilled to have Maisha moderating this panel. Thank you very much.
So I actually put together a couple of slides. I'm going to probably slice them into maybe two because we're running a little bit behind and I want to get to the panel. So before I get to those, I want to introduce our panelists. First, we've got Dennis Mortensen, who is the Director of Data Insights at Yahoo, author of Yahoo Web Analytics, and sits on the board of directors at the Web Analytics Association. He's an accredited associate web analytics instructor at the University of British Columbia and a frequent speaker on the subject of analytics and online marketing. He was the COO of Index Tools until it was acquired by Yahoo in May of 2008. Dennis writes about web analytics and online marketing on his blog, Visual Revenue, and I'm guessing that's visualrevenue.com.
Indeed it is.
Great. Next we have Marshall Sponder. Marshall is Senior Web Analyst at Monster Worldwide, I'm sure a very popular website right now, and Social Media Community Director of the Web Analytics Association. He maintains his own search engine marketing consultancy and has several B2B and B2C clients. Marshall's blog, Web Metrics Guru, is one of the most influential and viewed blogs on web metrics. Marshall is also chat moderator for Search Engine Workshops and World Resource Center. Welcome, Marshall. And last but not least, Brian Eisenberg. Brian is Chief Persuasion Officer and co-founder of Future Now, Inc., and Chairman Emeritus and founder of the Web Analytics Association. He is a co-author of two #1 best-selling online marketing books, Waiting for Your Cat to Bark and Call to Action. Brian is the publisher of Future Now's award-winning blog and newsletter, Grok.com, and is the author of ClickC's column ROI Marketing. So welcome to our panelists. When I was talking to Graham about tonight's event, we thought it would be a good idea, as something we haven't done in the past, just to give everybody a little bit of a primer in web analytics. So that when we get started, we have some understanding of all speaking the same language. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of things very quickly. The first item I have up here, I don't know if you guys were looking at this before. Does anybody know what this is? Anyone? Techies in the room? This is actually the first website. First website. Yeah. And actually, it was invented in 1990. A couple years later, it was updated. It looks like this. It's at, you can see the URL, w3.org. The reason why I brought this up is because I thought it was an interesting example, first of all, of where the web started, obviously. But the purpose of this website, basically, the guy who invented Tim Berners-Lee, essentially was trying to build a community around this concept, this new concept of the web. Obviously, these days, back in 1990 when he did this website, there was only one website in existence. Nowadays, if I can get to my slides here, Graham, I think I might need your help to find them. There we go. Nowadays, of course, back in 2009, there's more than 160 million websites, right? But the basic concept hasn't changed. People are trying to find ways to build community and build support around their concepts, whether that concept is a business, whether that concept is a company like Unilever trying to build support around a brand, whether it's Save the Children trying to build support around an idea to sort of change the world, right? So what you guys are all doing here tonight is essentially trying to do the same thing. How do you build support around a concept, and then how do you generate enough data and information to find out if you're doing a good job? And how to change what it is that you're doing to make your website work better. So we're going to be talking a lot about the idea of web analytics for specifically ultralight startups. Obviously, there's a lot written on the topic for large businesses. And the goal of tonight's event is to bring it to small business owners and help you guys understand what you should be focusing on and where you don't need to focus your attention. So I came up with just these 3 basics. Hopefully you guys will all agree with me. These 3 basics about what you guys should all be thinking about. These are the important concepts. First of all, you have to know what it is that you're trying to accomplish. What is your website supposed to be doing? And when I say that, I'm going to just actually skip to the next slide. I've been told this is an aha moment for a lot of people. Basically, in my opinion, there are 4 basic kinds of websites in existence. You can argue with me about that. I would love it if you can add a 5th. But there's branding sites like McDonald's. Essentially, you go to McDonald's.com. You cannot buy a hamburger there. But they're trying to sell you on the concept of wanting to buy a hamburger, right? And you can go to McDonald's.com and you can find store locators and look at all the cool young people hanging out at McDonald's.com. That's a branding site. And what they're trying to do is engage you, right, with the concept of their brand and with the possibility of buying their products and how wonderful it's going to make your life. Advertising sites like Glamour, which I have to admit I am not a Glamour reader in general, but I think their site is fascinating. I've used it often in terms of doing research for clients that I've worked with, and they have a really amazing way of grabbing people's attention with all these wonderful stories like how to have sex with your man and, you know, if you want to have, well, so Glamour is a fascinating website. Clearly, the basis of their revenue model is advertising, right, which a lot of you talked about. How do you get enough people to come to this website, generate enough traffic to get advertisers to then pay you for those eyeballs, essentially, right? That's a basic concept. A site like Ogilvy, which is for Ogilvy and Mather, the advertising agency, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. The basic concept here is leads, right? Ogilvy is trying to establish a brand also, but the goal for them is to get people to pick up the phone and call Ogilvy to pay Ogilvy to handle all of your advertising campaigns. It's a leads-based website. Anyone here, all the folks who mentioned that they're web development companies or branding companies, all of you guys are leads-based websites. And last but not least, sales, right? Direct sales. Amazon, FreshDirect, all these sites trying to get you to put credit cards into the website so that you can buy something instantly. The point here, they don't want you to call them, right? If you had to call Amazon for every purchase that you made, they'd be in real trouble.
So there is a fifth.
There is a, okay, so we're going to talk about that. That's awesome. The reason why I break these down is because it's really important for all of you guys to know which category you fit into. And some of you may fit into more than one. The basic concept here is that all of these websites need some kind of conversion, right? You either need to get people to pick up the phone, you need them to put in a credit card, you need them to visit your site and look at lots of pages so that they can generate advertising revenue off of it. Or for branding, it's debatable these days, but most of the time people are looking for engagement metrics. So when we talk about analytics, these are the things that you all should be looking to accomplish. Not just having people come and look at lots of stuff on your site, but some kind of conversion related to one of these 4 topics. So I have lots of other slides, but I'm just going to leave it there and start with you guys on the panel. So first of all, I would love to see if we could start with some questions from the audience. Yeah.
Hi, I was lucky enough to attend an earlier seminar about testing that WAA and Unica sponsored, which Brian shared a lot of really great ideas about testing for larger companies. For a smaller ultralight startup, can you sort of make suggestions on how you might tweak the message? Because if a company's just starting out, has a website, what kind of testing would you recommend?
So same way I talked about it on the webinar, but the end story where I talked about the 114% increase on the what I call point of action assurance. We talk about always be testing. That was a small company. The biggest problem that most people talk about and the biggest fallacy that's happened when the early vendors started talking about multivariate testing, they started talking about, you can do millions of combinations and all kinds of different permutations. And the problem is, what is the single biggest challenge for any organization? Resources, right? Whether you're a startup, whether you're a large company. And so thinking about doing millions of permutations, well, who has the time to do all that? Who has the resources to do all that? So the structure I've always recommended to clients is, look, find something that you just know that needs to improve. Come with a couple of variations, right? And I give a hierarchy of what's important. We can kind of spend some more time on that if we want to. And then from there, start testing. And then you can keep refining it, right? You just want to directionally keep moving it forward. That's really the key.
And is there anything in particular that you're looking to test? Are you specifically talking about your website or email marketing or ad campaigns or?
I don't have a business yet, but I'm going to in about 6 to 9 months. One of the things I'm sort of challenging, I'm a web analyst professional. I'm used to doing for my Fortune 500 clients, international clients. But when it comes to my website, I don't know how to scale that down to what I want to look at first 3 things, because I'm used to clients, talking about doing millions of dollars, but I probably have thousands or tens of thousands of dollars just for the analytics piece. So, just want to know how to tweak it. Is it copy? Is it the landing page? All different things. And I think maybe just what Brian said, just start thinking those maybe 3 to 5 things.
Yeah, I mean, I during the seminar today, I gave what we call Eisenberg's hierarchy of optimization. Well, Maslow went to Brooklyn College, taught at Brooklyn College. I went to Brooklyn College, so I figured, I can play that one. And I talked about it. At the core level, your site has to be functional. It has to work. It has to do one of those 4 things, and we'll talk about the 5th later. On the next level, it has to be accessible, right? People have to be able to reach it. If they're blind, they have to be able to read it, and that's going to become a much bigger, again, with the Target lawsuit a couple of years ago, that's going to be a critical issue. Then it's got to be usable, and a lot of people mistake conversion for usability. It's the biggest fallacy. Usability means I can hand you any phone in the world, and you know how to make a phone call. Doesn't mean you want to. Big differentiation. On the level above that is what I call intuitive. It's when you start feeling that the site is actually talking to you. There's such an engagement going on, you don't even realize that you're going click to click to click to click. It just there's a fluidity to it that keeps building your confidence as you feel like you're getting closer to your goal. And then ultimately is what I call the persuasive element, right? Which is your copy, your imagery, everything you do to convince people that you've got the right solution for them or the right product for them, and that they need to take the action now. And what I say is, the persuasion part is actually the most important and will give you the best effort, but it's also the most resource intensive. Where you can get a lot of big bang with almost no budget is the intuitive level. And so one of the examples I gave is, how many of you have a form on your website where you are trying to collect information? Okay, great. Well, let's talk the easy ones. If you're trying to get subscribers, right next to the subscribe button, you need to have these words. We value your privacy. No link. Nothing, just those 4 words. We value privacy. Because people actually will never click through to see your privacy policy. They don't really care. They just want to know that you value it. It could be $1.95 that you value it, but no. But you just need to have those words. It's what I call a point of action. At the point where you expect people to take action, you have to reinforce it. If you've got a shopping cart, let people know. When are you going to send the product? What's the return policy? People don't want to go looking for the return policy. Once they've added it into their cart and they start to fill out the information, they want to know the site's secure, they want to know your privacy, security, when it's shipped, how long it's inside, right? All that information should be right there. If you're in the lead generation business, real simple. How long it's going to take until you contact them? What's the process? Right next to the call to action button. And lastly, if you have an application, right, or download or something like that, be specific. Tell them exactly what they're going to get right on the call to action. Those assurances, make sure, and those are easy to do because usually they're just a few words. Okay, maybe a nice graphic, but it's easy to do and usually gives you huge impact.
Do you guys have anything to add?
Even though Brian speaks fast, I don't think we'll be able to list all the potential elements that you can optimize on. I think the cheapest thing you can do before you start applying technology to your testing is just to invite 5 friends over and do a usability test. It doesn't really take more than 5 or 6 people to catch most of the errors on whether it's a form or it's something else. And it doesn't take more than 3 and 4 hours to get you from somewhere not well to somewhere a whole lot better. And once you're there, then you might want to think about doing a test based on technology, such as multivariate testing, and then you can use 3 recipes or 100 recipes.
So Dennis, you've been living in New York too little time. If you invite friends over, they expect to be fed. So it actually costs you more money.
I'm gonna get over there.
Yeah, no, he's new to New York. We've got it. Cheapest alternative for usability testing. Usertesting.com. You can go ahead. You can specify exactly what you want them to test. It's $19 a test. If the more you buy, the less it is. So for $100, you can have 5 people go over your test, they'll video record it, give their comments, and you'll be able to do everything. So along the same vein, but yeah, it's another great...
Where are the people located?
All around, so you can actually specify demographics and stuff like that. So usertesting.com.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I think what Brian was saying about getting rid of friction, his whole approach is getting rid of friction all the way through, and thinking about allowing you to have all this information at one time seems like a good way to go. But as a web analyst, I often see that forms aren't, sometimes we can't always track all the things we need to see if those things are a success or not. And it gets harder as the site gets larger and more people are in the cookie jar.
What do you think we can do to remedy that?
I've had some thoughts about that, and personally I think that technology and business practices are evolving not always together. You know, like when a company gets taken over or when it merges or when it creates, it invests in technology, it gets very expensive to invest in it. Meanwhile, the business and the way the business is run doesn't always work that well with the technology they have, and so they don't always know when changes are being made. So then there's all kinds of holes. And then the other side of it is, the larger the site, I certainly could say this at Monster, but even at IBM when I was at, the more costly it is to monitor that site from a large web analytics solution that's privately housed, say like Surf8 or WebTrends, we have it at Monster. And so you start having a decision that, well, maybe I don't need to collect all the clickstream data because, number one, no one's looking at it. Number two, we don't have the space for it. So what starts happening is you roll out a new form and not everything, you've got all kinds of holes all over the site where you can't even really follow an experience all the way through. And it seems to be more and more prevalent. And it seems to me even the process of finding out, gee, you know, we changed something on the site, and gee, we have a promotion, but nobody told us because the analytics team isn't really told. This speaks of a basic dysfunction of business process, the way the organization is built and run, and the technology that they've employed and put in place. And sometimes I think that that's what we really need to align in order to make this process a full experience.
But you know, putting that back into a ultralight startup, if I spend $10,000 in any of my startups, I'm lying awake till the campaign is over and I know exactly what's going on.
But that's because it's...
And I don't think that's my opinion at least. I don't think that's the issue is in any startup below 50 people really not being in control from a data and process point of view, simply because you are and you don't really have that much to spend. I think probably one of the bigger issues is coming up with the right measure. I think a lot of people have the idea that they should go get a Google Analytics JavaScript and put it on their website and collect some data, and then they'll start doing some report surfing. They don't really know what they want to look at, but they surf through the reports, and I have 220,000 visits, and I have a bit of conversion here, and I have some time spent on site. But what does it really mean to their business? So I think people should forget everything about technology and web analytics tools and what have you, and just trying to come up with 1 or 2 measures that could truly drive the success of their business. And if I'm doing custom shirts, it might be orders per week. That might be the magic metric for me to run that business. And I wouldn't know, but that might be the right KPI. And then you need to figure out, how can I collect that data? Where's that data coming from? And that might be Google Analytics, that might be a conversion point on the website, it might be something else. It might just be a data point in a database or a log file. But the tool doesn't really matter at all here. If you can come up with that 1 or 2 data points, I think that's the most important part, even before you look at anything at all. Because when you have that, then comes the next task, of course, which is, how do you collect that data? Because in most cases, Google Analytics or Yahoo Web Analytics or Omniture might actually not really be suitable to collect that data point in a small company. It might be great to have your Omniture doing all your behavioral analytics in a large company for Monster to do what they do. But in a 5-man band, I don't really care how people surf the site as long as they buy my shit. So you know what? I'll figure that out another day. So right now, I just need to drive more custom shirt sales, and that's the metric. And I'm going to collect that in a log file, and I might be running some tests to see if I can sell 2 more shirts this week in a better form, which holds the right persuasion, and that's fair. But for me, at least in Ultralight, forget about everything in regards to technology, go back and find that 1 or 2 KPIs.
What you said is an emotional component to that, because I was just at another meeting today where the KPIs that turn out to be important to a business turn out to be something that's going to change the business. So, and usually there's some emotion connected to it. It's like some higher level, and then there's other ones that feed into it. But
I agree on that. It's difficult at Yahoo to agree on the one metric that drives our business forward.
Right.
I do agree on that. But in a 5-man band, if you don't know what drives your business,
There's a big problem. Well, no, but it's evident, you know.
we have other issues than analytics then.
You know, I've spoken, you know, we're Google Analytics Authorized Consultant and Website Optimizer Consultant, and I've been doing this for now 12 years. I've been optimizing websites. But the one common thing that I found, which is exactly what you were talking about, over 80% of the companies I deal with have never set up a goal in their analytics. And so if you don't know what you want to measure as success, why should anyone else? Right? Fundamentally, you've got to know how do you put runs on the scoreboard? If you don't know that, okay, that's the only metric that really, really ultimately matters. And the only thing that's truly measurable is dollars in your bank account. Everything else is arbitrary.
So I'm going to open up for...
I heard KPI instead of exactly. I don't know that.
Key performance indicator.
Sorry.
Easy one. Yeah.
So you keep saying, well, you need to know the number that's going to put runs on the scoreboard. And often that number is defined by the market. So in Gear Patrol, we're in the business of advertising, right? So everyone's obsessed with impressions and page views, right? So I could build today a slideshow on the site that in order to see one single piece of content, you're going to have to make 5 page views, right? And that's what the market is dictating is quote-unquote value. But then you have these other metrics of engagement, right? Oh, let's look at time spent. Let's look at page views per visit. Yada, yada. I think they all have flaws in how they're measured. I mean, so when you talk about coming up with a number that involves success, right? You know, the Yahoos, the Googles of the world, they're all about reach. They're going to reach 1 million people, and that's why you have to be on those sites. But for the small, little sites, you know, especially that are interested in advertising, how do you convince the market that you have valuable statistics when you can't provide these massive numbers of reach?
That's not one question.
You don't have a 1-sentence magic answer.
But even though if you're running a content site, let's say, and you derive all of your revenue off advertising, I do think that you should be able to come up with a metric that drives that business. And that might be ad views, or it might be average CPM value of your site, or whatever you think is valuable. I shouldn't set that for you, but that there should be a point. And you shouldn't let the market dictate that. And I don't think the market really can dictate that. The market might be able to bend Yahoo and Google, but not you. You should be flexible enough to set your own rule set. And remember, you're not selling that rule set, you're just using it to drive your business. You might go out and sell different products, such as CPM products, sponsorships, or whatever your product portfolio is. But I think you should still be able to set that. I don't think page views necessarily is the right one, especially if you're faking it, because you know, one thing is to lie to other people, to lie to yourself is not really.
Do you have also comments?
I mean, there's a number of things. I mean, obviously, with Dennis talking about, you know, this is this delicate balance, especially on the web, of dealing with the customer experience and our own business goals. And it's always about a synthesis between the two and learning what to sacrifice. Maybe one of the other things that you can focus on is, you know, understanding who the different market, basically who's driving the business, right? So you've got advertisers on one side and you've got, you know, content readers on the other. And we've got to say, okay, well, what's valuable for both and how do I achieve it for both? So what does the advertiser want to get? And so, yeah, it's click-through, but it's really ultimately revenue for them, right? And so if you can start showing how you've helped your advertisers get better revenue, you know what? The prices you set are going to be higher. Because ultimately that's what they care about, not just the number of reach, but are people actually engaged with the ads and actually doing things with them.
Great. You want to take another question?
This is sort of follow-on question. If you're an advertising-based site, like we are too, I mean, having done this for a long time, for regular, for other people's companies, there is a key metric that's really important, which is your unique visitors, because it gets you at least on visibility with advertisers, because if you don't have so many unique visitors in their eyes, they're not even going to talk to you. So like our unique visitor metric as measured directly through Google Analytics, which we use, is like 280,000 uniques. But like the number on Compete or the number on QuantCast or on ComScore is just so far off in any of the sampling technologies, especially if you're in a niche category like me, like moms, they're not part of the sample, like pregnant women, they're not part of the sample, it's like people who are more active internet users maybe. So like how can you optimize against that, or is there any way, or is it just sort of known that there's not a match?
I've been thinking though, I've been using ComScore a lot at Monster, using web analytics, and can't say I've used the app, everything out there. But what I would say is that the purpose of some of these tools like ComScore is really to find out, how many people are interested in going to a site in order so you can sell advertising on there. And they have terminology like unique visitors, which isn't really the same thing as the web analytics unique visitors, because it's based on a construct, but it's called the same thing. So what happens is the terminology has gotten really messed up, where people are asking for things that the tool really isn't designed to do. The ComScore tool seems to be more a research tool. It should never be used as an absolute measure of how much traffic. I will say we use it usually, Monster uses it usually just to see how they're doing against Career Builder and Hot Jobs and something else. They might want to see the demographics of some sites. But I think in some cases we end up finding ourselves using this data as if it is an equivalent to web analytics data. It is not.
Do you find that you're actually coming up against advertisers who are using that data, or was it
Well,
more of
I
a
mean,
general
basically,
question?
whenever we talk to people, the number that they're looking at is either, the outside people are looking at a QuantCast or a ComScore number for us, and it's the number
They're totally
that we're not.
different. They're
Right.
totally
Are
different.
you guys
Whereas, like, I
finding
do
the same thing
operate-
happening when you talk to outside people?
It's not really where I focus on.
Thing,
But
because like internally, I mean, I do follow, like I look at those metrics on Google Analytics every day, and I'm watching certain things, like I watch certain keyword referrals on Google that are very important to us, or certain things that like are meaningful that maybe we can control or whatever when I'm operating the business. But then the whole idea of when you go out and sell yourself and say I have so many eyeballs, or my site is of such value because it's so big, your internal number seems to not be valid or valuable in the external marketplace.
Yeah, which is especially a problem if you're a small startup with limited traffic. The samples aren't really good enough from
Won't even
Comcast
show
or
up.
Comcast or any of the others. What I've seen some startups go out and do is have a sample of the traffic validated by in either IAB or somebody else, so they can come out and say, hey, this is something I had validated somewhere else. This is my raw data, and they will verify that it's indeed 280,000. We have this momentum, so it was done 3 months ago, so you should expect us to be here. So it's not a complete
Right. But
metric, made up
would do
metric.
that like against your DoubleClick or against your ads delivered, for example? I mean, just like, because I sometimes do like, what's my real number? Because I do. I go to like Glam, which is my ad network, and I compare it to my Google Analytics, and I compare it to my Google AdSense account and see like they're all pretty close, and then they're way off from ComScore, Compete, or
They
Well, because those
do
are
have
using-
one-time off products, so you can have them verify the number. But I've even seen some startups go out and have their local Ernst & Young or some accounting company actually verify the data to get a second stamp on it.
Doesn't Quantcast have the option of quantifying your website, and then you put a code on
But
your page and
it's just yet another number. So
isn't that then directly measured, so it should be the same? Is that?
So far, we're not the same.
And you've got the.
I put the direct measurement on in January, so I don't have a full month of data on that. But so far, the sample doesn't match.
if you just take it should be, yes, but it's not. So without getting too nerdy here, so you would assume that if you take a piece of JavaScript from Google Analytics and a piece of JavaScript from Yahoo Analytics, put it on top of each other on the same website, they'll come out with 280,000. That's just not the case, and that's not going to happen. First of all, we both call it unique visitors, but even us, we calculate it differently. And then remember, it's a visitor, so we have to catch the visits, the individual page views, collect all the visits throughout the periods, and there's information such as, does a session run out of 30 minutes, 20 minutes? When it becomes midnight, do I split it in two? Don't I split it in two? When I go over to a new month, do I split it in two? Do I not split it in two? So the whole thing, we of course made up and took a whole bunch of decisions. But they're not the same decisions as Google. So even those two numbers on top of each other will be different. And even just the placement of the code. That's about, we did a test on our own code just to see if we can come up with the same number for ourselves. So we had the same code, and there was actually 4% difference on the top and the bottom. Just on the same piece of
Where do you
code.
get more traffic? If the code's at the
Top.
top or at the top?
At the top, because it loads quicker. But also, just one quick point. Index Tools was the first web analytics tool that actually supported the standard from the Web Analytics Association, where Google still has not. Just as an FYI.
Should we be putting it at the top of the page? Out of interest? Is that a good plan? Putting your code at the top?
There are pros and cons against it. Yes, it'll be more accurate, but again, that'll end up loading before content. So,
Well, yeah,
We had problems with it
I would
at the
advise
end when we
against
did that.
that. It depends on whether I rather sell the shirt or measure the opportunity to sell the shirt. How about you give me the money and then I'll figure out if I can gain some insight out of that sale. I'll start with the money first and then I'll collect the data afterwards.
yes, GTC, right? Get the cash.
Something like that, yes.
So I don't know much about web analytics, but I don't necessarily agree with what you said, Dennis, using Sepp's example of the t-shirts where you drive a measurement by sales. Should it actually be by the number of visits versus conversions to sales? Because if your sales goes up, but the ratio of the number of visitors is becoming exponentially different, then that's a better measurement. And then even like the number of new sales as opposed to just sales. So I would thought those two would be actually the better metric of a...
I'm obviously not a native speaker, but when I said that I couldn't really tell his KPI, it means that I can't.
Sure.
And I don't think necessarily that revenue or profit is the right driver. I think perhaps grow margin per visit is a better one. I think you're actually right on that. But I think it's something you need to figure out for your own business. And I think especially if you're a also like startup, you might not even be able to measure that metric. You might actually need to choose a proxy for that metric because you simply don't have data enough. Because if I'm just started out selling shirts and I do a sale a week, 4 sales a month, there's not really too many data points really to take a decision on should I invest more here or there. So you might have to figure out what is the proxy for
The first
that.
data point should be how many visitors actually came to the site versus how many started an order versus actually how many made an order, because those two precursor points actually define whether you're getting new traffic or something else happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly lots of data points you should be collecting. But again, depending on who you're talking about in the organization, first of all, right? Whether it's a small organization, large organization. If I'm the CEO, I basically want to look at one metric every month. Marketing efficiency. It's what I want to keep up. In other words, whoever's doing the marketing, every expense that's going in versus revenue coming out, I want to know, are you doing better every month with whatever I'm putting in? Because my resources are finite and I've got to make sure you're doing better and better with it every single month. That's critical to it, right? And then you can also do that against gross margins as well, right? And get a sense of how much more profitable are you actually becoming.
Yep.
Can each panelist please just say what they think the best metric is for sales? Because that's just like I'm an egoist and really want to know what's the best metric for sales.
Well, so I've always been a fan of conversion rate. I mean, the only thing my company Future Now has done for 12 years is help companies improve conversion rate. So I think it's a good proxy for saying, hey, am I doing better at reaching my marketing efficiencies than what happened beforehand? Because traffic either comes in two ways. I have to work harder for it, right? And you can just spend time doing it. Or you have to invest money. Those are usually two ways to drive traffic. But conversion usually is just sweat equity. right? And that's something that startups need to focus a lot on, and something you really can control. You can control it more than you can control Google changing their algorithm overnight and dropping your traffic in half, right? So it's really something you've got to focus on.
I think for sales, it'd be conversion rate. I mean, but it would depend like on what type of site you have. So if it's, like a blog would be different, or if it's retail site, it's different than say, something where you're not selling something directly. So I don't always think it is conversion rate per se, but for sales, yeah, the number of visitors versus the number that bought.
I would,
Just give it the second best.
no, I was actually just about to politely criticize conversion rate. I think that's a fantastic metric, but I think there might be some flaws built into it, such as if you do want to measure sales and you do 100 sales a week, if you just look at the conversion rate, you don't really know the value of each of those sales. So 2 weeks where every sale is average $100, where the next week is $20, will look the same, but one of those weeks are better. Then you might have 2 weeks where it's $100 in average sale per order, but it's high-end orders or cheaper to produce orders that week, so the profit is higher. So it might disguise something if you just look at the conversion rate. And there's a number of reasons why it might be disguised in the conversion rate. So I'm not too fond personally in using that. So it's not so I'm probably more fond of using gross margin per visit.
Right, coming back to the marketing efficiency numbers.
Yes.
Thank you.
So in the back.
Thank you very much.
First of all, a lot of people think that, because what's tracking is mouse movements, that mouse movements are correlated to eye movements, and they're not. Actually, we've seen tests with both, and usually, actually, it depends. If you're in a forum, they're great, because where you put the mouse is usually where you're engaged with the forum. On the rest of the site, you usually want to move the mouse away from you, so it's confusing. What it is good for telling you is whether people are scrolling down your page and engaging with your content. That's it, done. So, like ClickTel does a great job of form analytics, using a similar type heat map, great application for that. But for the rest of the stuff, iffy.
I agree completely with Brian on this. And I would even add more caution to it, because when people have a look at it, they tend not to look at the 280,000 visits, they look at 5. And for some, they know that it's not really a representative sample, but they look at those 5 as that's the truth. And then they play those over and over again, and all of a sudden they turn the site to the left, which might not even be the right direction. It's just those 5 that they looked at. If we kind of do a playback, then you might look at the data in aggregate, so it's for all 280,000. But even in aggregate, then you will be overlapping segments that have very different behaviors. So the aggregate makes, from data validity point of view, no sense. It's just an aggregate of 2 things that you can't add up.
Right.
I think they look fantastic, and they're actually
Sexy. Yeah,
they're super sexy. I used to be a web analytics tool provider. They sell real good, but the value is not.
Well, it's not everything, but it's helpful, just to look at your site if you can get all the links to work. I mean, that's one of the things. In a lot of cases, we've had cases both at IBM and at Monster even, where even if you could get the heat map to work, you wouldn't really get all the links. But also, it doesn't have. Oh, thank you. It doesn't capture Flash. I mean, a lot of the Flash events, a lot of the rich media events aren't going to be captured unless they're coded. So I mean, in a lot of ways, if you can get it to work, I think it's helpful, but it is just part of maybe 25% of the information you need. It isn't everything.
So maybe not the place to focus if you're only going to focus in one place, right? Because as a small business owner, it's always a matter of balancing resources, right? So maybe that's not necessarily the place you want to put all those resources.
But they look so cool.
They do. They're very cool. That's what one of my favorite applications is ClickTracks, right? Because John Marshall was a really good friend. Was the first person who invented the overlay product, right? Where it took all the data that was in the tools and put it on top of your. And that's a fantastic opportunity to use stuff. But yeah, the heat map stuff. Just if you want to have fun with heat maps, Feng GUI. Look for an application called Feng GUI. Feng-GUI.com.
That one doesn't anticipate heat eye tracking, right?
It
But it doesn't really.
So you take a screenshot of your page and you throw it up there, and it shows you what it would look like under eye tracking. So it's Feng-GUI.com.
But how good is it, though?
Let's get some
It's
people
not
who have
terrible.
that.
It's,
not terrible.
it's okay. It's directionally correct.
It's directionally correct.
What was site type number 5?
Oh, self-service. So if you, let's say you have an application and you don't want people calling you, you don't want people contacting your service, or let's say if you're like a utility or something like that, you want people to be able to access all information or banking and stuff like that. Those are all types of self-service, and those are equally fall into that category.
Interesting.
And then of course you can add in,
a whole discussion.
and of course, there's amounts, but usually it's towards cost savings as opposed to cost generation. So again, it's the same thing as an intranet. Right, if you think about it.
Would you put government sites in that category?
I would put government sites usually in the self-service.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a category. Is it something a startup would focus on? Probably not, but it's certainly a fit type of site.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have a question also?
Yes. For the purpose of folks here for Ultralight startup, are we only talking Google Analytics since that's the only free one? And if it includes
Yahoo
the next
Analytics.
tools, as of several months ago, Yahoo.
Hold on, just eat another piece of chocolate.
Planning on releasing it, is there, if it's not giving anything away, when is Yahoo going to make index tools available for the general public? Because there are criticism about Google Analytics and some of its methodology.
Before you answer that question, I just want to mention that pretty much if you have a hosting account for your website, you have free analytics. Pretty much all hosting accounts come these days with an analytics tool. And the vast majority of small businesses, I can say, do not use most of the analytics that they get from some of the more robust tools. They just don't use them. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't install Google Analytics because eventually you'll use them, but again, when you're balancing resources, you do get free analytics with your hosting account. So.
But Yahoo Analytics, it's definitely better than Google Analytics in a lot of ways. If you think of Omniture as being the cream of the crop, Yahoo Analytics will give you about 85% of the functionality for free, where Google Analytics will give you between 65 and 70%.
What specifically does Yahoo use that Google doesn't?
I'm going to let Dennis speak.
It's tougher now.
Trust me, I have the answer. I spent 4 years in pitching that. I used to sell a product for money and had to compare that to free. But there's one huge difference between what Google does and what we do, is that they collect and aggregate data and present that aggregate back to you. So that means if you want to do a segment after you collected the data, that's too late. Let's say that you want to do a segment on New York. Then you figure out later it should actually be an East Coast segment. That's too late because you collected and aggregated and essentially destroyed the data. What we do is that we collect and store the raw data. So if you want to go back and create a funnel for last Christmas, or a Danish segment for last week, or look at a conversion that you didn't collect yet, then you can do that because all the data is there. So it's probably a bit harder to set up without being super sophisticated as such to set up, and it takes a bit more energy. But I think that's okay, because you shouldn't even go into the tool if you don't have a question. So never go into the tool without having a question first.
Right.
Or else you're going to end up suffering from what I like to call data diarrhea. Yeah. Sorry for the visual.
Yeah. So obviously we spoke about the basics for startup, but just to get perspective, what big companies, big websites are really spending on what they are researching when they do their analytics.
No, I did actually. I wrote a thing for this because I thought Maisha was kind of like asking that. It turned out not. But I was trying to find what was written about, or what research that says, like, if you're a startup and you're funded versus not funded, or you're in first stage, second stage, third stage, going mezzanine funding. And I found there's almost nothing written about it. So I created my own grid, which I put up, which basically said that, at the point where you get to be public, you have to start caring more about the fiduciary responsibility. At the point where you're worried about some of your data not being hosted by Google that might use it for all kinds of other things, or even Yahoo that might use it for, then you might have to go with one of these self-hosted. Well, if we go forward to this one, like this was all the things you needed to collect, but here's like where I try to say, okay, what does Wikipedia say a startup is?
It's on its blog, don't worry about it.
It's on its blog, but I mean, it's the idea that like, okay, you start with first stage, second stage, third stage. Not that I know exactly how every startup is, but like depending on what kind of startup you are, according to the way they define it, like what would you reasonably expect that you'd want to have? And then the net, basically the free stuff. If you're a startup, you probably want everything free, at the beginning. But as we go forward in the next slide, if you go forward, I don't know, how do we go forward? Yeah, if we go forward here, you'll see that basically the spending, I actually try to break it down by spend. Like, well, how much would you spend? And I think when you get to the point when you're medium to large size, you're going to be starting to get to the $100,000 range. When you're large, you're going to be under or around $1 million, and very large will be over $1 million a year.
And are you asking fundamentally different questions at that point, or
yeah, you
same
are.
questions and more
And there's a lot more stakeholders in there, and there's a lot more data. Like if you look at Monster, it's got so much data, or IBM, it's so much data. I was just speaking to someone in NBC today, and like I thought, well, maybe they like Google Analytics for some reason. I don't know. It's cheap. But then I found out that NBC would never use Google Analytics. Why? Because they sample everything past a certain number of bytes, and they would not need that. Plus, there's nobody that they can call up when it's a problem. And if you've got lost or something going, some promotion or something going on, you found out that something wasn't working, what are you going to call Sergey Brin, or you can get a hold of Avinash? I mean, you can't get a hold of these people because it's free. It's optimized for you guys. Don't need it, but Monster probably couldn't run on Google Analytics, and it couldn't certainly use Yahoo because it's owned by HotJobs and so on of our competitors. So obviously they're going to want to. Yeah, I wouldn't really want that. So really, they have to host their data. A lot of companies have to host their data. And yeah, they can buy Urchin, yeah. But in a lot of ways, these solutions aren't optimized for heavy-duty problems, and they certainly aren't optimized for all the questions that Monster would need to ask. So really, basically, they don't go up to the.
Just to answer your question, perhaps more directly, we of course monitor our solution, so we know exactly what functionalities is being used. So you can send me an email and I'll send you a list of the top 5 most used reports, both in Yahoo, and since Avinash is a good friend of mine, I'll send you the top 5 most used reports in Google as well.
Now, did you say send or sell?
Send.
I thought he said sell. I could have swear he said sell.
Just to make sure everybody got it. It's send, not sell.
But I just want to add.
And I wish it were a set of different reports, that it was some of the sophisticated technology. Unfortunately,
everybody's using the scooter. They've got Lamborghinis and they're using a scooter.
I can also recommend, so Brian writes for ClickZ. You're still writing for them, man. ClickZ is a great resource. It is generally geared towards larger, medium to large size companies. So if you're looking for resources for information about how larger companies are looking at data, and what questions they're asking, I think it's
all over, yeah.
Yeah.
Questions about landing pages. So you have direct traffic, which obviously goes to your homepage. You have your SEO that comes to the specific page or your homepage. Now you have SEM, where you're actually investing money and you have multiple target customers and you have multiple landing pages. And then you have multiple goals. And I found that in the previous company that was too much of a headache for our startup to actually focus on specific customer segments and define goals. I just want to hear your thoughts about specific landing pages and SEM expenditure and then the conversion of that.
Before you start,
Yep.
I think, because you know a whole lot more testing than I really do here, but I think the most important thing you need to think about when you do paid search advertising is yes, indeed, the campaign itself and the landing page and everything surrounding that. But you need to have a optimization goal in mind. Because if you don't have a optimization goal in mind, you'll end up essentially de-optimizing your campaign. And just to give an example here, if you do something as naive as optimize for impressions on Google, I know that's obvious, that would be wrong. You would write titty, titty, titty. That might get more impressions, I would assume. Then you might optimize for a click-through rate. You will then write $1,000 free. That might get people clicking, but unless you're sending out, $1,000 notes, that's not going to work. Then you might write decent deals here, and you have a landing page that doesn't really convey what you said in the ad. Then that might not be the right thing as well. Then you might even go and optimize towards conversions. Say, okay, I just want to have the right conversion. Yeah, but then you're just converting within that single visit. But how many visits does it take for me to buy a shirt? 1, 2, or 4? So if you just optimize towards sales within that visit, which is the only thing Google Analytics can do for you, then you might be de-optimizing towards the good keywords that will take me 4 visits and I'll end up becoming a buyer, but you might throw those away because you only optimize towards that one visit. So even before you look at that, you need to know what you're optimizing towards so you can optimize with that in mind. And I think that's actually rather difficult, but I think it's worth thinking about. So you don't just look at what is my click-through rate on my campaigns, and if I move that from 4% to 4.5, everything's cool. Because it's not. You might actually just take some of the good keywords now and optimizing them away. So the long term, 3 months or 6 months, is getting worse and worse. So after half a year, the campaign is utterly shitty, coming from being average. So that's important. So then the landing page.
No, it's interesting because it reminds me of when we were talking originally about the panel, about one of the interesting case studies I had. And so I had a client who started with us, I think it's going back almost 5 years. When he started, he was 4 people, he was doing about $500,000, and he just wanted to make sure he had us month after month after month, because one of the best clients, by the way, give him a whole bunch of things to do, he'd disappear, wouldn't hear from him for a month, we'd just get checks, then all of a sudden, okay, what's next? And he just kept absorbing more and more advice. And what he's done, and what made him so successful, is during those years, he just kept being a master of execution, keep improving things constantly on the experience to get his goals. And what was interesting about it is he created a system basically that produced over 500,000 unique landing pages that were so custom tailored. It's why he had tons of pages that were converting at 90% and above, okay, for significant sale and complex sale. So it's just that constant dedication to improvement, like I was talking about, this optimization and what he was trying to achieve, that he just blew away his whole competition. Like one of the things that he did is he was basically a comparison engine for high-speed services. And one of the key things that we came back with is that, your database takes too long to come back with results, right? Because people usually only wait about 8 to 15 seconds at most. And all his competition was basically taking 2 minutes, and he figured out, and they just optimized their code until they were down under 30 seconds, and he blew away almost every single one of his competitors, because it's a constant focus on improving the experience and achieving more of his goals. And it doesn't matter the amount of landing page, just continuously pumping them out and continue getting better at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Yahoo is better than Google, but how about Microsoft Office?
I can't advertise us being better than anybody. Of course, that would.
I can say
that wouldn't be fair. I think if we look at those that really try to make value out of data, Yahoo and Google are spending most time and money on that subject, and Microsoft haven't really gotten their heads and hearts into this. If you ask me, that's very.
Well, the main person who's behind the project, they moved to another project, Ian. So, I mean, it tells you something about the product.
But, there's analytics tools.
That's what we're talking about. That's specifically what I'm talking about. Yes, I think they're doing it.
Yeah.
Just assume there's somebody behind. You pointed out earlier that on my hosted web solution, I've got WebAlyzer. Why? What's I mean, I'm showing my naivety about Google and Yahoo's solutions, among others, I'm sure. But what is the difference? What's the advantage of using somebody else's tool than looking at, and especially because it's going to put code on my site, it's going to slow it down and whatnot, as opposed to server-based, something that's already built in.
Coming back to my initial comment, I think if you find the right key performance indicator that really drives your business, you might, in most cases, be able to get that off standard log files. And then, if you can do that, that's just good enough. You shouldn't install something that holds greater complexity just because you can. So I think that's cool. And I think a lot of, most people in here would be able to do their log files alone. If you can't do that, what the difference between what you have and what you see in the hosted solution is that we can remodel the data after you collected it. So when you look at your log file, you have to reanalyze it and come back with a new report, and that takes a certain amount of time, but we can remodel that in real time. So you might say, okay, so those 280,000, how many are Danish? Or how many are Danish buying customers? Or how many are Danish buying customers over $100? Oh no, let me add Sweden to that segment. So you get to remodel the data and ask questions and get answers, which you can't do on the log file. But I'm not saying that that's what you're supposed to do. I'm saying you might be put in a situation where you find that valuable.
Yeah, when I wrote my first thing on web analytics, I wrote a book called Marketer's Common Sense Guide to eMetrics that Web Trends ended up giving out tens of thousands of these things. I think that's when we first met at one of the events here. It was all based on log file stuff, and the log file stuff was enough to spend time optimizing your website. Certainly, tools have added more sophistication, a little more fancier, but it doesn't really matter. It all depends on what's your goal and how do you keep optimizing it.
So the advantage would be not necessarily the data collection, but the analysis of that.
Correct.
And the other challenge that you find is that if you are not using one of those tools, I think a lot of the reason why people use them now is because if you don't start using it now, it's not collecting any data for you.
You're not getting historical stuff.
And when they're talking about log files, they're talking about that's what your hosting company's using. They're using log files of all your traffic, and then they just spit out reports based on what's in the log file. But if that's all you're using now, then you won't have the opportunity to use a Yahoo or a Google to manipulate the data because it's not there yet.
Now, the only really good thing about log files that a lot of the JavaScript solutions can't do is it's actually not detecting most of the spider activity and stuff like that. So it's not detecting most of the search engine spider activity. Okay, so there's some real value to having that kind of data as well.
I mean, also RSS feeds, podcast downloads, a lot of those are harder to get with the JavaScript solutions. So there's value to having a hybrid approach.
Yes.
All right. So, I'm looking at this chart and I wonder, obviously ultralight startups, people are lightly funded, but it's not a problem necessarily spending money getting something out of it. I've met some business consultants that have actually told me, like, don't call me until you're 3 years in, things like that. So with that being a kind of mindset that I'm having, what would you guys say to kind of like get into it? I mean, it sounds like there's some maybe even cookie cutter approaches to certain things, like put, we value your privacy next to it. But you would think, well, I want these guys in on the ground level while I'm developing it. So I'm developing it along the lines of what they're going to be looking at later. Or is that just not worth it for the dollar from day one?
No, it certainly is, and it's one of the reasons. Look, I'm, at heart, my brother and I, who started our company, are just entrepreneurs and true at heart, and tell you a whole bunch of horror stories and good stories. We put out well over 2 million words online. There's definitely something like, 3,000, 4,000 articles. Okay, 8 years worth of archives on ClickZ, on our blog, rock.com. There's 1,500 posts, all about things that you can do for little or no money. Because again, it's the way we look. Now, we work with companies like HP and Overstock and Dell, but you'll hear a lot of our success stories of a guy named John Morana, who ran a business who did Yellow Page ad design. And we took him from 1 to 2 leads a week to, 20 leads a week. Was it 30-something leads a month. Okay, just changed his whole business, and that is actually more exciting than whatever we do for Dell. We gave Dell a whole analysis. They changed 3 words on their website. It was worth millions.
Well,
it's not a satisfaction to the same level.
Brian, you said something critical. Forgive me. It's the one thing for an entrepreneur, okay? Because it's funny, when we were talking before, the 4 of us, BSing before the event started. We said the number one thing is, as an entrepreneur, you don't just manage by objective. You don't do things like you do in a big company where you decide on KPIs or, you decide on the things that must get done, the things that need to get done, and the key is to actually the doing, not the analyzing. And so decide, like Dennis says, and I think that he was right on track, is decide what's important to you and then keep doing things to move that needle. I think that there's a lot of emphasis on this idea that, well, we need to collect data, you're not going to know, okay? You're going to do, and it's going to work, or it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to predict it. You're not, you don't have millions of customers to model. You can't do what the big companies do. So keep making the changes, make intelligent changes. Brian just gave our resource, but there's a lot written on this. Do the stuff. You're absolutely right. Just do the stuff, and that will get you the results.
But I want to point out that, a lot of this starts with observation. And at the point when you are ready to ask the question, like, what could I mean, the idea of what Brian does, essentially, is that there's a lot of money that's left on the table that never gets collected by you because you didn't improve something. You got 2 leads when you could have gotten 20. At the point when you are aware that you have the question, what could I do to improve getting more leads? That might be the first point where you would want analytics, because you might want to say, well, how do I know what I can improve? So then you start tagging stuff, right? But without a question, there's no answer. But at the beginning, maybe you don't care. But once you can ask that question, then you have to have some way of finding out, well, how do I know how I could collect? I better put something on my site so I can at least measure. And then as you get along, you might say, well, that thing doesn't really capture everything. I need a better solution. And it evolves from there. And then as sites get more complex, you need a better solution because you can't measure half the things that they now do. And that's basically what's happening.
Right, what I like to tell people, get good at free, then worry about paying.
Yeah, so when you're doing an experiment, you're trying to decide if one thing improved your metric better than the other. How much data do you think you need? Is it a week's worth of data? How many clicks?
There's a lot of variables to that. I'll give you a perfect example. So today, we basically reinvented our company. We were a consulting company and written best-selling books, and we've turned it into a software company now. Where what we'll do is we'll actually monitor your website and give you the recommendations, like a to-do list of what you need to do to keep improving your website. So we haven't started promotions yet. We literally just relaunched this as of January. And so today we just took one small email list, and again, I've 10 years worth of emails that I've collected, and some are valid, some not, but whatever. We took one small list. There's just 240 people, and we split it in half. And we said, okay, we're going to take this email to this group, this email to the other group. And again, is it super relevant? No, but one got double the opens, double the responses, and closed the sale. Which do you think I'm going to continue working on? Do I need to wait till I get statistical validity? No, I'll keep using this until it stops working, and I'll refine it again.
Yeah, what you can do, and I definitely agree in this. Sometimes you don't have the time and energy
or the luxury.
The tools, technology, but go out and just do a Google search on statistical significance. It'll give you plenty of tools that will give you the option to put in the number of visitors coming in, the number of conversions, and the percentage that you will go for, such as most people go for 95%, and you might go for the same, and you can say, I get 1,000 visitors, I have 2 conversions. Is that enough for this test to be valid?
Right. And it's whether you want to be scientific or you want to just make more money.
You can do it in hand in Excel. It's not advanced, but at least you have an answer on, this is actually more random than a real answer.
So I just want to do a time check, Graham. How are we doing
on? Take a couple more.
Okay. Good.
I don't know. If you stick around, you can
Question for Monster. Do you guys ever use landing pages, or do you always try to keep your own page?
Both. No, we do use landing pages. I see a variety of types. We do both.
What would be some examples where you wouldn't send them to them?
Well, we have a lot of promotions running on them, where they might first go. I've been finding out about a lot of them. They first go there, then they end up being sent to hiring.monster.com. or they could be sent to another site. But most of the time, I've been seeing mostly employers.
For the employer side, for the candidate side?
Well, there's two sides, the seeker side and the employer side. That's the two. There's a hybrid thing there too, but mostly. But there's a lot of stuff that they're doing. I don't even know all the sites that we have out there. We have so many partnerships.
One more question? Yeah.
Actually, I did want to say, Monster does, and so does Career Builder, a lot of newspaper alliance things. We have like, if you know the New York Times, it'll have on the bottom right, it'll say, Monster, find a job, New York Times, and Monster. They go and do a job search. It looks like the job search is on the New York Times. Is actually part of it sits on the New York Times, and the other part sits on Monster. But that would be an example of a landing page. We can always get the data for that, and they can't always get, the New York Times can't always get the other side that goes to Monster. They don't go directly, they look like they're on the New York Times site, and then they go to, but also drives a big share of our traffic. And we just had a restatement in ComScore, by the way, from that, because it was incorrectly counted, I might say. The ComScore person is still here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I want, there was a gentleman talk about put your blog on your own website. Does search engine discriminate the internal link as opposed to external link?
Yes, and I'll tell you, because we made the mistake 10 years ago when we started our website and we started a blog in a different domain. And first of all, it led to a lot of brand confusion. There's a bunch of different issues right now. I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. And what ended up happening, we've got so many more links to the blog that we've actually lost some of it that we could have had to the main website. So there's some real delicate balances to it. There is a lot of value in internal links and the anchor text that you put in internal links, and so don't dismiss it. It's actually pretty powerful.
So I think that's
it?
pretty much it.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, well, I hope you guys all join us at the for drinks afterwards. Thank you.
I've already had two.